Chapter 47. Carving out a place in the literary world. The elevator doors spread wide and onto the second-floor homicide department strutted Skinner. He cleared his throat to announce his presence, and the most prominent department sycophants dropped into an orbit around him. He stayed fastened near the door until the idolatry faded to mere admiration, and then he sauntered around the corner to the coffee machine, grabbed the nearest mug, read the comment, smirked, and leisurely poured himself a cup. The mug read, "Captain Johnson, hands off or lose the hand." He turned back around the corner in time to see all but a few detectives and officers scurrying into the briefing room as if driven by a rogue wave. Behind them rushed an angry Detective Martin. Without looking, Skinner carelessly set the half-finished mug at the edge of the counter and moved toward the briefing room. "You know you're taking a big risk, L.A." Skinner jerked around to find the voice. "What?" "You take too many risks, and one of these days you're going to pay for it." Parker, the man Skinner thought might be closing in on his secret life, was looking squarely at him. He blanched and wobbled slightly. Parker walked over to the counter and gently pushed the mug away from the edge of the counter. Skinner recovered his composure and reached out a hand to Parker. They grasped firmly and gave a brief shake. "So, what have you been up to, L.A.?" Parker asked. Skinner smirked. "Just carving out a little place for myself in the literary world. Got a good one going this time, a real slice of life. I'll send you a copy when I'm done. I think you'll find it very intriguing. I've got a few more characters to take care of and then I'll be done. It shouldn't take too long." He smiled smugly. "And how have you been?" "Still working the spooky case, but I've lost a lot of resources and man-hours. This terrible thing with Ashley Barkley, the mayor's daughter, has really hit hard. Yeah, I heard something about her being kidnapped. Well, she's not missing. They fished her body out of the Sound," Parker said. "Really? That's a terrible thing to happen now." "Now?" "Yeah. In the middle of the spooky investigation. You'll probably want to help find Ashley's killer. Maybe you and what's-her-name could help." "What's-her-name is Agent Simpson." "Oh yeah? I don't see her here." Skinner glanced around the room. "What's she up to?" "You just missed her. She went down in the other elevator. She needs to buy some more appropriate clothes for our hiking trip up Mount St. Helens," Parker informed. "Aren't you going to help with the Barkley investigation?" Skinner asked. "After all, this is the mayor's daughter we're talking about." "I understand, but catching Spooky is my priority. If they want help from the FBI, all they have to do is call the Seattle FBI branch." "Yeah, but..." Skinner stopped mid-thought. While he wanted to pull Parker away from the spooky investigation to slow him down, he realized that if he pushed too hard, Parker might begin wondering why. Now, Skinner wished he hadn't. Impulsively killing Ashley could prove to be a dangerous miscalculation. With Ashley dead, there was no urgency to rescue her. It had released Parker from any obligation to find Ashley. "Yeah, I can see that. The mayor's a friend." "Really?" "I didn't know that you and he were friends." "Oh yeah? Yeah. You're probably right though. Spooky is dangerous. Besides, what we have to do now doesn't require a lot of resources, just a lot more hiking than it would have been." "Hiking?" Parker looked confused. "Yes. Remember? That's why Agent Simpson is shopping. We're heading to Mount St. Helens." "Really? Why?" "Let me just say this. For the next 3 days, we're going to be looking for fumaroles." "What the hell's a fumarole?" Parker relayed the explanation that Mabley had given him. "Interesting. Well, I hate to leave on such an interesting topic, but I need to spy on the Ashley investigation. I might use her in my story. Poor thing. She should really be more careful. Too late for that advice now." "Yeah, isn't it though?" The corner of Skinner's mouth curled slightly as he walked past and looked at Parker, and then headed to the briefing room. Parker gave Skinner a quizzical look. "Agent Parker, how's the coffee?" Captain Johnson asked as he came around the corner from his office. Don't know, Captain, I'm wired enough as it is. How did the call go? It was tough. I mean, there's no easy way to break that kind of news. Ready for your hike? Parker smiled. We're leaving for Mount St. Helens in a little while. Have you discovered anything new that we need to know? Last thing I got was the names of the most recent victims, and that led nowhere. Sorry to leave you in the lurch, but the priority is Ashley's murder. I understand completely. Just find the asshole quickly. Detective Martin will. I've never seen her this determined and upset before, and I've seen her pretty damn angry. I just pray that someone catches him before she does, otherwise he may make it to a body bag instead of a trial. They wished each other luck and departed, Parker to look for fumaroles and Johnson to make sure that an angry Detective Martin didn't lop off heads before the investigation even began. Detective Martin stood in front of the assembled task force and waited for silence. She had to start without it. Listen up. About 2 hours ago, Ashley Barkley's body was pulled from the Puget Sound. This is now a murder investigation. The shock silenced the group momentarily. Then an indistinct murmur trickled through the room. Our investigation will now. Out of the corner of her eye, Detective Martin saw Skinner casually leaning against the door jamb of the briefing room. She stopped mid-sentence and shot a deadly glare at him. He greeted her with a wry smile. She sent him an even more intense glare, and then jerked her head back to the troops. She had lost track of what she had started to say and had to start again. 2 sentences into her comment, she heard a loud whisper. Hey! Hey! It was Skinner. She refused to turn her head. There was a rap on the door jamb. She ignored it. However, the room turned toward it and fixed on Skinner. She tried to summon the group with a glare. It failed. With great exaggeration, she cleared her throat, but it was too late. She had lost control of the room. There was a louder rap, and in one motion, she turned toward Skinner and rampaged at him. When she was within 2 feet, Skinner jerked back, but then relaxed and smirked. Muttering streaked through the room, and all eyes locked on the impending confrontation. The audience was not disappointed. We need to talk, Skinner demanded. You need to get the hell out of here before I have you thrown out. He leaned toward her and whispered in her ear. So I take it that you didn't like my little gift. I wrapped it nicely and watched it drift away. I was surprised at how well such a skinny woman floated. Her head jerked back and she stepped away. He intensely glared at her, and with a tilt of his head indicated that she had to talk to him immediately. She obeyed. However, while she had allowed him to coax her out of the room, her face couldn't hide what she really wanted desperately to do: bludgeon him into a bloody pulp. Then, as if he had felt the anger smoldering in her, he mocked her with a long smug look, a curled half-smile, and a wink. You know you can't do that even though you want to. If I were you, I wouldn't always count on that. So, you think you can break away from him, from them, from me? You can't. He owns every black piece of your heart. He owns your mind, your will, and when he wishes, he will own your soul. So, you will continue to do what I want, when I want. Get used to it. He smiled demonically. What's up, Ellie? Captain Johnson asked, walking up from behind. Just having a little talk with my friend, Lindy. Skinner responded. From the look on her face, it's hard to imagine that it is friendly. Nonetheless, you need to move on. I'm sure that Lindy wouldn't mind if I stayed, would you, Lindy? It's all. It doesn't really matter what she wants. The investigation is a police matter, and until you can produce a badge, you can't be here. Skinner put his hands on his hips, tilted his head back, and in a thick accent responded. Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges. Johnson smiled contemptuously. Funny, but you still need to mosey along, hombre. Detective Martin happily watched Skinner's hostility switch from her to Captain Johnson. He glared at Johnson and said, Maybe Mayor Barkley will have a different view of that. He might, but until I hear it directly from him, you'll need to leave. Besides, I'm sure that one of your informants will be telling you everything anyway. We've got more than a few celebrity whores in the department. Anyway, adios, LA. You'll find the button prominently displayed at the elevator. Make good use of the one with the arrow pointing down. Skinner sneered, then faked a smile, spun on his heels, and started toward the elevator. After a few steps, he looked over his shoulder and frowned insidiously at Martin. She glared back, turned, and walked into the room, followed by Johnson. As murmured comments rolled through the room, Detective Bryant loudly asked Johnson, "What's with L.A.?" Captain Johnson reached behind, shut the door, and cleared his throat to bring silence. "Don't worry about Skinner. In fact, for a change of pace, let's see if you Skinner fans can keep your damn mouths shut about the Barkley case. If you can't, I might serve you to the mayor with an apple in your mouth." He turned to Lindy. "Let's get this show on the road." Detective Martin stepped forward. "Here's what we know." She then laid out the real information and her manufactured information. Ashley had called her early in the morning. She had told her roommate that she was going to a downtown nightclub. She hadn't said which club. She probably met someone at the club and subsequently ended up at the Calico Cat Hotel. Considering the reputation of the hotel, she most likely did not know the person. Her circle of friends would have found something nicer. She was disoriented. Initially, she didn't know where she was. Ashley couldn't remember how she ended up at the hotel. She couldn't remember whom she was with, nor could she recall what she had done, but it appeared that someone had brutalized her. Her vagina and anus were very sore. She had no clothes and had no idea what had happened to them. When she awoke, she was alone. She had no idea when the person had left. Detective Martin assumed that whoever was with her patched himself up, came back, abducted her, and later killed her. The prime suspect would be a male who has lost a lot of blood. There was a significant amount of type A negative blood on the bed sheets. Ashley had said it was not hers. That was correct. Her blood type was B positive, so it must have belonged to the person she was with. So, Melinda was checking Cody's to see if there is a DNA match. That would take time. Hopefully, Melinda would come up with some helpful forensics soon. Detective Martin passed out photos of Ashley that were to be used when questioning witnesses about Ashley's activities on the night of her disappearance. The task force was told that they would be checking hospitals, veterinarians, drug stores, supermarkets, and break-ins where first aid items are missing. Under Martin's direction, the troops organized and left. Chapter 48. Heading up the mountain. Knowing that 3 of the 4 people he was following would be armed, Skinner had kept his distance as he followed the randomly bouncing flashlights of the group as they headed up the mountain. Maberly, the volcanologist, led the way, followed by Simpson, Parker, and Wright. The spirit of Passe made Skinner's movements blend with the sounds of the forest, and gave him a night vision as keen as an owl's. A thick parka kept him warm enough to endure the nights. While it had been 3 decades since the top of the mountain shattered and then blew itself across the north slope of the mountain, the pumice plain had only stubbornly relinquished small sections to trees and brushes. He had to be satisfied hiding behind a broken crag and peering at the group through a pair of binoculars. With the flashlights lighting the person in front, he could easily keep track of them as they crossed the barren plain. About 7 a.m., he saw the 4 stop. Their flashlights revealed a small stream of smoke drifting past them. Skinner zoomed his binoculars in and saw Maberly pointing at the smoke. It was the first fumarole. They turned off their flashlights. Within seconds they moved past the faint plume and disappeared into the shadows behind a large outcropping of rock. With their backs to Skinner, it was time for him to move, and move fast if he were to keep them within range. For hours, he moved along a parallel path, dashing from bush to rock and crouching behind whichever was available. They had stopped only a few times as they came upon light yellow drifts of smoke. Then they headed up the mountain away from the cavern. Finally, they entered an area where Mother Nature had found enough fertile soil to plant pines and a few other hardy species. As they crossed into the denser parts of the forest, Skinner began to exaggerate his stealthy movements and envisioned himself as a silent Sitka warrior closing the distance on his prey, 30 yards ahead of him. At 2 p.m., Parker, Simpson, Wright, and Mabley stopped, dropped their backpacks, and settled in for lunch. Skinner had moved within 10 yards and had concealed himself behind a large bush. As he watched and listened, Parker jokingly ridiculed the fumarole sites for their diminutive stature and lack of evidence. As far as he could see, there had been very little activity around the fumaroles, thus, none could be the site of the killings. Wright commented on the rapid progress they were making. Mabley told him that this was the easiest part of the trek. There were several fumaroles further up the mountain, but the terrain would be steeper and tougher, and they should expect it to take longer to get to them. If they were lucky, they might get to a few more before they had to stop for the night. They could get the group in this area done by noon the next day, and then they would head down the mountain toward Windy Ridge and Spirit Lake, where there were a few more fumaroles. That's when Skinner began to fear that they might find the cavern, and thus, the bodies and the tools of his new trade. They would also find his fingerprints on the tools and his DNA on the bodies. He had to consider his options if, or when, they found the cavern. Suddenly, he smiled to himself and thought, killing all of them would be the most satisfying, even enjoyable, but it would be difficult to do since Parker, Simpson, and Wright were armed. Picking them off one at a time would be too risky. But if I just got rid of that dorky Mabley and took his map, it would take them forever to find the cavern if they ever found it. Still, although it would be fun to carve up that volcanologist like a honey-baked ham, and chuck the pieces into Topilo's golden fire, it's probably best to hold off and wait to see if they even get close to the cavern. Topilo, the herald of God, wouldn't want me to be caught. He has a lot more work to do. But it sure would be a kick to carve them all up. It sure would. As the sun set, the group turned their flashlights on, and Skinner moved close enough to hear the group straining, except Mabley, over the steep, rough terrain. Only Mabley wasn't breathing heavily. Wright was especially vocal, commenting several times that after he was finished with the fumarole adventure, he never wanted to see Mount St. Helens again. As far as he was concerned, the next time it erupted, the whole mountain could be blown away, and they could turn what's left of it into the world's largest pumice factory. Parker replied, I don't think the world needs that much pumice. And the world doesn't need this damn mountain either. Wright responded. Stop bitching, Wright, just try to enjoy Mother Nature and her creatures. Simpson chastised. Enjoy her creatures? I'll probably wake up with a ferret lodged up my ass. Wright whispered. I would have thought that you would enjoy that. Parker said out of the corner of his mouth with a slight turn of his head. Maybe. I haven't tried that one yet. Wright quietly responded. Mabley checked his watch and said, It is now 8:23 p.m. With the last part of the journey to the highest and most remote fumarole still some distance away, stopping now would be best. Finally, Wright commented. Now you can pull that ferret out. Simpson chuckled. Parker laughed. Wright mocked a cringe. You didn't think I heard that, did you? Simpson said. Mabley looked bewildered. As the campfire of the four died down, Skinner moved within 5 yards, huddled behind a bush, and waited. When the night chill crept into his body, he propped himself against a tree, pulled his knees up tightly under his parka, and kept an eye and an ear on his quarry. From time to time, he drifted into a light slumber where visions of his scalpel cutting into the flesh of a faceless victim startled him awake. Each time he recoiled at the vision, and then smiled. Each time that he smiled, he thirsted to slice again. Before him slept 4 tantalizing victims who could satisfy a burning desire to do some sculpting. His thirst was deepening. The night was torturous, and by morning he was shaking, not from the cold but from the all-encompassing desire to feel the scalpel splitting the flesh and to see the crimson blood surging and sparkling as it flowed out. It was an addiction now, and it needed release, soon, or he felt that it would surely drive him mad. It was 5 a.m., and Mabley was the first to awaken. He opened a can of sterno, lit it, poured a third of the water from a gallon collapsible container into an aluminum pot, put the pot on a foldable stand, and heated the water. He added instant coffee and waited. As the others awoke to the wafting smell, each kicked off the sleeping bag, unkinked the joints, staggered to the coffee, and quickly devoured a tepid cup. A southerly breeze pushed the smell of the coffee to Skinner. He inhaled deeply and longed for a hot cup. Coffee was his last remaining addiction, well, almost his last. The marathon addiction of drugs, booze, and broads had been replaced with a marathon of carving and killing. He snuck a peek around the bush and saw Wright delightfully savoring a cup. I would kill for a fresh hot cup. He smiled at the irony. He would literally be willing to kill for a cup and more than willing for nothing at all. Since the first kill, he could taste the blood as readily as he could smell the coffee. The only difference? He'd rather kill than sip. The taste lasted longer and was far more filling. But now was not the time to drool over the possible ecstasy of carving up 4 people. He had to protect the cavern, and 4 missing people or corpses would draw attention to the area that he needed to keep hidden. Death, unfortunately, would have to be a last resort. For now, all he could do was watch, listen, and wash down a granola bar with an energy drink. The group packed the gear and continued on their way up the mountain. It didn't take long before Skinner realized that they were trekking up a perilous mountain ravine. The reward Mabley's band received for weaving in and out of trees and scrubs, and struggling over loose rocks and sheer crags was, at the end of the day, to finish precariously perched on top of a flat rocky ledge that had been created during the 1980 eruption. It jutted out from the side of the mountain almost 20 feet. At the back of the ledge was a steep, nearly barren portion of the mountain. 10 yards away to the right was one of the fumaroles for which they had been looking. It had become clogged with yellow mounds of sulfur. What remained hovering around the camp for the evening was a light, pungent odor, not strong enough to keep them awake but still potent enough to be annoying. A memory jump-started Mabley awake. He excitedly woke the other weary-eyed troops. He had remembered an especially large fumarole near Spirit Lake in the Windy Ridge area. He suggested that they head for it at first light. Wright moaned at the thought of first light, but grudgingly joined the others who were enthusiastic about the prospect. Chapter 49. It could be worse. It could be raining. Parker's eyes crept open to a view of ominous black and gray clouds. The sun couldn't find a crack to peek through. He glanced to the left. Simpson and Wright were still asleep. He looked past them to Mabley's mummy bag. It was empty. He wasn't too concerned. Mabley would wander back into camp soon. He was probably relieving himself. Putting his arm behind his head, Parker propped it up and waited. Wright sat up, stretched, and belligerently demanded, "Where's my fucking coffee?" Parker answered, "Where's the coffee? I've got a question for you. Where the hell is Mabley?" "He's probably answering the call of nature," Simpson offered. "That's already been considered, but I've been up for." He looked at his watch. 15 minutes and I haven't seen or heard anything. Maybe he's silently grunting out a big one. Wright said and then announced loudly, hoping Mabley would hear. "Pinch it off, and make some fucking coffee." "Nice, Wright. Stop acting like a douchebag. You might want to try politely calling his name," Simpson suggested. "There's a novel approach," Parker said as the two of them stared at Wright. Okay. I get it. But I still need some fucking coffee." Wright shouted Mabley's name several more times without any response. Parker squirmed out of his bag and shook off the morning fog. "Where's the map?" Simpson said. "Maybe he left early for the, what's it called?" "Fumarole," Parker answered. "I don't think so. He left his gear," Simpson informed. "Why didn't he wake us?" Wright asked. "I don't know," Parker said. "But we do have a map. Mabley emailed me a copy, and since there might be no cell signal out here, I saved it on my phone. So, if we don't find Mabley, we will be able to get down the mountain. But you don't know this mountain. That's why we brought Mabley along. So, basically, we have no idea where he is, Simpson concluded. We need to find him, Wright added. Well, we know that he didn't get lost. He knows this mountain too well. So, he must have fallen in the dark, Parker said. Or got attacked by an animal. I hear that there are bears around here. Wright snickered. I'd expect some screaming and growling, Simpson said. From Mabley or the bear? Wright quipped. Never heard a bear scream. Regardless, I heard nothing, Parker responded. Seriously, though. It's treacherous up here, and my guess is that he fell, Simpson remarked. Okay, we'll search here for a little while. Then we're getting the hell off this part of the mountain, Parker said. We'll spread out no more than about 20 feet apart and look for him on the way down. Just keep each other's flashlight in sight. If you lose sight of anyone's light, start yelling. Then, everyone stop and move toward the flashlight that you can see. Then we'll follow the sound, which is not going to be easy. But we're not going to search for him very long. We don't know this area well enough. If one of us ends up getting lost or hurt, we'll just make the problem bigger. We'll get to a place where there is some cell phone reception and call for help. If we don't find him or he's hurt, which is probably the case, one of you will get help. For all we know, he could have been knocked unconscious, and when he regains consciousness, he could be looking for us. It may sound callous, but if we don't find him soon, I'm looking for those other fumaroles further down the mountain. Which fumaroles? Wright asked. The ones near Spirit Lake and Windy Ridge, Simpson remarked. Parker sighed at Wright, and then frowned at the gray clouds. Turning his palm up, he held out his hand. When he looked back down, he saw Wright building a frown. Wright's jaw tightened. He shook his head side to side and said, Shit! It's raining, isn't it? I'm so happy that Mabley picked the steepest part of the mountain for our camp, Wright sarcastically complained. Stop bitching. It's just a little sprinkle, Simpson chastised. As if on cue, the forest lit up and almost immediately a clap of thunder echoed all around them. The sprinkle turned into a steady rain. Wright turned up his collar and donned his baseball cap. So, this is a little sprinkle? Whoops, Simpson sheepishly replied. Wright continued. Whoops. Great. We're on the edge of a volcano with lightning cracking around us, and we don't know where our guide is. He could be hurt and waiting for us to rescue him, and you come up with whoops. This changes everything. We need to get down this part of the mountain, fast. It's too dangerous staying here. The side of the mountain behind us doesn't look too stable, Parker said. I don't think there's a fast way down from here, Simpson warned. If we get caught in a landslide, there will be, Wright said. Then let's get out of here before this gets any worse, Simpson said. Then the deluge was announced by another nearby burst of lightning and an immediate roar of thunder. You just had to say something, didn't you? Wright said. They packed up their gear, and for the few minutes they argued about whether they should wait for a lull in the rain. It rained even harder. The lightning struck closer.